Hello and welcome back. We are in day 2 of P4 notes, and the P4 section is all about equations of lines. Today we're going to talk about finding equations of parallel and perpendicular lines, and you're also going to need your graphing calculator. There are pre-printed notes for these, so make sure you have your pre-printed note sheet in front of you, and let's get going. So the two things I told you to find the equation of a line that you needed were point and slope. So if you have those two things, you can find the equation of a line. Sometimes they give you slope in different locations. So this problem right here is usually the one that most students find challenging. Find an equation for the line passing through the point 6, 1 and parallel to and perpendicular to the line 3x minus 5y equals 15. So you need equations of two lines. The equation of a line parallel to this line and perpendicular to this line. Now you see they have point, but where in the heck are you going to get the slope? That's when you have to put your thinking cap on and say, hey, this is an equation of a line, so you're going to use this equation and you're going to solve it for y to find the slope. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Subtract 3x from both sides and divide by -5. That will give you the slope. So the slope of this line is 3/5. The next clue is it says it's parallel to this line. If it's parallel to this line, then you know the slope is equal. So the slope of that line is 3/5. So the slope of the parallel line is also going to be 3/5. Perpendicular lines, however, have slopes that are opposite reciprocals. So you're going to take, instead of 3/5 for being the slope of that line, the perpendicular line is going to have the slope of -5/3. Now we have slope for the perpendicular, slope for the parallel, and we've got a point. Bada boom, bada bing. We've got everything we need to find the equation of a line. So we're going to use the point-slope formula, and here's your slope is little m. x1, y1, you're going to fill in the colored letters here. So slope is going to be 3/5, so we'll replace that m with 3/5. Our point was 6, 1. So we're going to replace x1 with 6 and y1 with 1. The nice thing is, once you have this set up, the only thing that's going to be different on the perpendicular line is this slope right here. You're going to replace that with -5/3. So the line that's perpendicular to it will have this format. Now they didn't give us a particular form of the equation. They didn't say find the standard form of the equation or the point-slope form or the slope-intercept. So we can leave it just like this. This next example, I want you to try on your own. This is independent practice. What you need to do now is grab your graphing calculator, because we're going to see how to use the graphing calculator to find and graph equations of line. This next example is an indication of the practical use of linear models, of finding lines, of how come you learn all about these lines. It's to find models and make predictions. Businesses use them, everybody uses them. So here's the table that they give you on your notes. You'll see the table there, and you're going to have to do 4 things. The first one is to write a linear model of the disposable income. Then you're going to use the model to make an estimate and make actually 2 estimates. And then what I want you to do is we're going to be using our graphing calculator and do a scatter plot and graph the line through there. So let's get started with the first one. It says write a linear equation for America's disposable income y in terms of the year x. So they're already telling you let y be the disposable income and x be the year. Very important when you're doing these types of problems to remember what does x represent and what does y represent. So the very first thing we need is to find slope. We have the 2 points, so if we find our slope, we'll take y minus y over x minus x, and we get 0.45. It's actually the change in trillions of dollars from year to year. Use this point and the slope to find the equation of a line. Could I have picked the other point? Absolutely. I picked this point because there's no decimal on the y coordinate. So plug and chug into your point-slope form of the line. So we'd have y equals 0.45 because that was our slope from up here. 2002 comes from your x and 8 comes from your y. Multiply through your parentheses, because let's go ahead and make this as simple as possible because we're going to have to be doing some stuff with this equation. And combine like terms. So our final answer is y equals 0.45x minus 892.9. That's our model. And what we can do with this model is we can put it in our calculator, we can graph it, we can say what if when the year is 2100, what will happen with America's disposable income if the trend continues as it is. So we're going to use this equation to estimate America's disposable income in 2005. Well, 2005 is a year, and if you recall, they said let X be the year. So you're going to find Y when X equals 2005. You just plug it into that model that you just found. Here is the equation given the pattern, the linear model for America's disposable income. We're going to put that 2005 in place of X and crunch the numbers. Bada boom, bada bing, you get 9.35. Oh, I love calculators. Calculators make it so much easier. We don't have to worry about all this multiplication dealy. Then see, you're doing another equation where it says to predict the America's disposable income in 2010. This is another problem I want you to do on your own, and we will check it in class. I will check it. It'll be part of your notes grade to do. Follow the pattern just like this one. So we estimate this, when we found this one, we estimate that America's disposable income in 2005 will be $9.35 trillion. I want you to see if you can do letter C on your notes. Now, grab your graphing calculators and let's get going on the next part. It says to superimpose a graph of the linear equation on a scatter plot of the data. There's a couple things that you may or may not have done in Algebra 2, but I'm going to take this step by step. First off, you might want to write down these steps before we actually get to them. So the first step is we're going to push stat and edit to input our data into L1 and L2. L1 represents the X's, L2 represents the Y's. After we input our data, we're going to go to stat and calc. Then we're going to push linear regression, second one, the number one, the comma button, second two, the comma button, vars, Y vars, 1, 1, and enter. And then we're going to, it'll automatically, the reason we do this Y vars things is it's automatically going to put it into the Y equals button. We need to adjust our window. Make sure our data is contained in the proper window, and make sure your stat plot is turned on so you can see those data points, and then we're going to graph it. So let's do the first step together. So if you've got your graphing calculator, the very first step, I want you to push stat and edit. This is what screen you should have. Stat, and you're going to hit number 1 for edit or arrow and enter, and then you're going to hit number 1 here. When you do that, this is what should pop up on your screen. You'll have L1, L2, L3. Now, if these are not cleared out, you can go to the very top, arrow to the top, and push clear. Do not push delete, push clear, and it'll clear those all out for you. Now then, if you're going to input the data, remember your X's are your L1s, and those are these amounts, 2002 through 2007. So type those in. At the end of each one, hit enter, and it'll take you to the next line. Use your right arrow to arrow over to this column to put these in. So pause it here until you got those all inputted. Now that you have those inputted, you're going to go back to the home screen if you need to, but you can hit stat, and then I want you to hit the calculate button. So if you hit stat, use your arrow to get the calculate menu, and you've got all these things you can do with the data. We're going to be selecting number 4, linear regression it's called. And then we're going to hit that, and we're going to have to put in our L1 and L2. If you have a new one, it's a little bit different screen. This is for the TI-83s. But I want to do one other thing, and that is put it in so that the equation goes right into your Y equals so that you don't have to input any decimals. So L1 comma, L2 comma, and then you're going to hit the vars button. And when you hit the vars button, this is what pops up. You're going to arrow over to Y vars. So you're going to arrow to the Y vars, and you're going to select number 1 for Y1. And what this does is it automatically puts your function, when we find this, into the Y equals, and you don't have to retype it. Then you're going to hit enter. When you hit enter, this is what should pop up on your screen. Y equals AX plus B gives you what A is equal, gives you what B is equal, and you can kind of compare it with the one that we had. We had a pretty good model there just with those 2 points, pretty close. All right, if we go over to the y equals menu, we want to make sure everything's going to graph. Y equals, you'll notice that this equation's already in there. That's why we did the y1 dealio. So then stat plot, if it doesn't show up on your window when you hit the graph button, make sure your stat plots are turned on. If they're not, you hit second and then you hit the y equals button. This is what'll pop up, stat plots. Hit number 1 and select on, and then you can go over to your window and make sure your window is right. I'm doing from 2000 to 210, -1 to 15. You can do any ones you want, but it has to, you have to put the X here. I put the X between 2000 and 2010 because our data started at 2002 and went up to 2007. So I always like to give myself a little room there. So here's what should show up when you hit the graph button. There's your points, your data points, and then it should graph this line going through those data points. It's a pretty good linear model. There's a lot of things you can do at this point. You can actually trace along the line and get different, for which year, how much disposable income, and so on if the trend continues. All right, that's going to do it for us, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.